Hi, I'm Jamie Stegmeyer, and you're listening to Board Chitless.
Welcome to Board Chitless, episode 51. We had a week off while I moved house and stuff, but now we're back on, and we've been playing Scythe, the Rise of Fenris. It's a campaign game, and it's crazy. But more importantly, who's talking with me today? I'm not alone in a room. So I'm Leki, and I'm with...
Don't say anything, they'll think he's alone. Thanks, Tristan.
Oh, wait. I'm here with you, Leki.
Thank you.
I'm Tristan.
I'm Sam.
Wonderful. And like I said, we've been playing more Scythe. Now, it's a campaign expansion to the Scythe core game. If you want to learn more about Scythe, we can listen to episode 1, where we're going into it in a lot more detail. You can listen to our interview with Morten Peterson, who does the Automa rule set for solo or for adding extra AI players. And in episode 40, we interviewed the games designer, Jamie Stegmeyer. So there's loads of back catalogue of Scythe chat there if you want to learn more about the game. But we're just going to get stuck straight in talking about what the expansion brings. But we are going to be very careful not to spoil it for everybody. So we're going to go for a spoiler-free podcast this week. If we can manage that, we'll see. Fingers crossed. Scythe, the Rise of Fenris. I've been saying that a lot today. How are we getting on with it? It's quite a massive expansion.
Should we mention we've got the other two expansions mixed in now? So we've got
Yes.
the Wind Gambit, so airships, and we've also got Invaders from Afar. So we've got all the factions. We've been running this campaign with 6 players out of a possible 7, and we've had the 7th player played by an Automa, so that we've got a full board every game. So this game would feel very differently if you were playing it with just a couple of players and no AI factions, I think. But
Yeah.
we've gone full tilt, so every single game ends in, like, if not a bloodbath, like a full board, a busy board. All of the adventure tokens get hoovered up and everything, and I think it's probably the optimal way to play.
Yeah, it's a large element of crowd control, isn't there? People got hemmed in a couple of games.
Yeah.
People have kind of sprawled
Rightly
out
so.
in another.
It's a bit more aggressive, because you can play, like with a 2 or 3 player game, you could potentially just be doing the Euro side of Scythe, which is just working on your economy and everything.
Yeah.
But with 7 players, within a couple of turns, there's people at the edge of your kingdom, and you have to think about how that affects you and where you can explore to. And
I think it's more tense than aggressive because it's the threat of the aggression, but there's not as much. I think there's probably more fighting with fewer players because everyone's fighting over the factory at the centre. Whereas 7 players, the scrapping or the potential for scrapping is everywhere on the board because you're always brushing up against someone. So I think it always feels more tense than the actual number of fights that you have.
But then I think people have been, because it's a campaign, people have been hesitant to start annoying the neighbours.
so that the grudge doesn't stay for
Yeah,
long.
because then they've got like another 6 games or whatever to reap the whirlwind.
I don't know if that's specifically on purpose.
We've not been
though.
at war with each other, Leki, and that's
Well,
not
no.
normal for us.
That's
We're
'cause
right next to each other.
Because you sit next to each other. If we changed where you seat, or
Yeah.
sit even, on a per game basis, there'd definitely be more combat, I think.
Yes,
But
I
you
think so.
snuggled up to a little friendly sort
Yeah,
of
it's a
alliance.
cozy corner of Europa, isn't it?
Or in my case, Automa and you, Tristan,
Yeah.
which is not that friendly.
But
I'm friendly.
I've had Rust for this campaign, so I'm just going to rush for the middle anyway, rush for the factory pretty much every game, and I only seem to fight people when they come into contact with me as opposed to me jumping on them, apart from when I can just materialise somewhere else and get into fights with Sam. But
Yeah,
that's
you
fun.
have an aggressive faction
Yeah.
right from the start.
Annoying faction.
As long as you keep your tractors off my garden, we're fine. In terms of the campaign element and the game's sort of like persistent elements, so each time we end the game now, we don't just reset, we total up our wealth and then we can buy things or we can get extra perks or we can just gloat about how many games we've won. Like Tristan's won 3 games out of 5, I've won 2, Dave's won 0, Sam's won 0, Daz won
I've lost a
0.
few.
The Automa's been a bit bullied as well.
It has, yeah.
Because of how well it did in the first game.
It did very well, didn't it?
Yeah, it became a threat straight away. I think people have kept an eye on that now.
Wasn't that because there was more automa in the first game?
There was two, but they both did quite well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing. So we've agreed now if a player misses a session, they get replaced with an automa for that session. So it just keeps the campaign moving. Given our predilection for never finishing a campaign of anything, this was our like emergency bandage procedure for being able to actually finish something for once.
Definitely required, and it's the only game where we can really do that because we've played Seafall in the past and we've played Kingdom Death Monster, and they don't have the automa rule sets. So you can't really do much about it apart from carry on playing without that player.
Yeah.
And then in which case they just get left behind. At least with Scythe, there's a rule set sort of generating an income for them.
Yeah, and in some cases doing better than they would have done.
Definitely.
Every case.
So I think the campaign elements, this goes back to what I love about campaigns. I like the idea of legacy games, and I like the legacy games that we've played, but I definitely prefer this where you unlock new stuff, you open boxes, you find cool things, you add new rules and everything, and then at the end of it all, you get to play with it all. And it's kind of what Jamie Stegmaier did with Charterstone. It was like you had stickers and you changed components and you destroyed components and stuff, but at the end of it, there was a playable game. And at the end of this, you can go back to regular Scythe, or you can start including elements that you've unlocked from the campaign as you go. And some of them have been, I think, more successful than others, but some of them, like, you instantly sort of go, okay, that's going to stay. You know, every game, once we finish this campaign, every game of Scythe moving forward is going to have this element mixed in, sort of thing.
If you compared it to, say, Pandemic Legacy, so Pandemic Legacy elevated Pandemic, like, immeasurably. Like, I don't like Pandemic as a game, but Pandemic Legacy is one of the best board game experience I've ever participated in. I don't want a functional game at the end of it. I don't want to ever play Pandemic again.
Right.
I don't really want to play Scythe again when we're done with the campaign. So for me, if this was a legacy game, I think it would have to be pretty good because it's pretty good campaign. Like the campaign has like kept me hooked. Like I do enjoy it. But I think for it to go on to then be a legacy game, I don't know. I just feel like there's more. The permanence just adds something, you know. We've argued about this long and hard about campaign versus legacy.
Yeah, it brings a bit more jeopardy to the table, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I suppose having an expansion that's legacy to a core set, like you can write on or rip up all the expansion parts, I suppose, and not break the core game. But I suppose the campaign route has allowed James to just add more stuff whilst make the original game more modular, but then you're not having to ruin that original base game. But I think it's got drawbacks as well, though, because to me, some of the elements that are put in the game, so there's with the win gambit, there's extra victory conditions, so you don't have to put 6 stars down to end the game. Other victory conditions pop up. And the same thing happens with Rise of Fenris as a campaign, but they're not really optional. It's not, there's extra things added to the board, and once they've all been mopped up, then the game ends, or there's a specific objective that someone needs to get, and then the game ends. And I found that to what that would do to if it was a regular game of Scythe, it doesn't give you that Scythe game experience. It does change it, and it makes it a lot different. But generally, it ends up in a bit of a sort of victory points grab, and the game ends quite quickly. So we've had some very short games of Scythe, and so as well as an epic 3-hour marathon as well, didn't we? At one point, we had one that went long.
The sort of longer games are it's just Scythe. Like there's not a lot added. The really short games are when there's been sort of extra victory conditions added that have either been triggered sort of by accident in one case, kind of, or have just. It's just made the game shorter. I think I triggered the end game in one of them. Did I? Oh no, I just had a star, didn't I?
Oh, it's Leki. Each time it's been Leki.
Yeah, it's been Leki every time.
For the rush win, but it only actually worked out twice. Well, no, worked out both of my victories. I actually rushed them.
No, one. Tristan won.
The fifth game.
The short victory.
Yes. So I've done it. I've ended the game short 3 times. So I've basically, if I'm going to say, I've ruined the game for everyone 3 times.
Just change the dynamic. That's all.
Yeah.
Didn't ruin it.
Won twice, lost 1. But those games though, it didn't. It's fair enough. It didn't ruin it, but it didn't feel like a proper game of Scythe.
Okay, so talking around the spoilers here,
Yes.
there is potential at certain points in the campaign for some games to go much more quickly than a regular game of Scythe would.
Yeah, and in an 8-game campaign, one of the games lasted half an hour. if that, and probably setting up and tearing down probably took more time than actually playing that game, just because of how it sort of unfolded. But then I suppose once you've played through the campaign, the great strength of this is you can then go play through the campaign again, just reset, whereas opposed to Legacy where that's it, you're done.
Yeah.
You've got to buy a new box, unfortunately. But with this, if you know those things are coming, you can mitigate that. So I think, like you were talking about house ruling it.
Potentially, maybe just like carry on playing until you've got all 6 stars down.
But having said that, we haven't finished the campaign yet. So...
Yeah, exactly. And as well, we've played 5 games in 2 sessions, so we've dedicated about 10 hours, maybe a bit shorter, to playing five games of Scythe. That's incredible. So 2 hours a game, maybe it works out in our average. And we've got 3 more games to play, so we can certainly see how it might just work out in the long run.
Yeah. I think when you mentioned Pandemic before and you said you're not really a fan of the game, but the Legacy improves it immensely. Had the exact same experience. I'm not a massive fan of the base game, but we played through it as a family, and the Legacy version is brilliant. And then you said you'd have a similar experience with Scythe, basically, because you're not a massive fan of it to begin with, but the campaign, you were eager to try it out because it adds all the new elements and stuff.
I love campaign games, yeah.
But then at the end of the campaign, you're going to go back to Scythe plus the new stuff, so it's still going to be Scythe. It's not going to be Legacy or an ongoing.
It's not so much the new stuff that's elevating; it's the surprise.
Yeah,
and the narrative. I know I'm like in the minority of this, but the theme of Scythe's never sort of really struck that much of a chord with me. It's all visual on the art and everything. There's not. I know it's sort of create your own story, but there's such disconnect with the way that the board is set up and any sort of theme. Like it just doesn't. It's not a thematic game for me. It's like it's a very Euro with some conflict. And the actual story has brought that theme forward, but during the game itself, it's not there. It's still not really been there for me, but it's been between games.
Yeah, in terms of narrative, like Nikola Tesla's factory city in the middle of Europa always felt a bit thin. The theme itself, in terms of you've got agricultural workers and soldiers, like expanding and building up an engine. That's always been really thematic for me. But like I agree with you, Dave. Like playing the campaign. The amount of narrative elements that have been added, it's just really kind of like brought it to life for me.
There's like a 6-page story at the start of the campaign, which probably should have read out to each other at the start, but I thought give you the gist.
Yeah.
But there's like a big sort of narrative introduction to it. And so we've been reading the flavor text between the missions and stuff. But that's
there was gasps around the table at one point.
Yeah, even just like that page or half a page before each chapter has been brilliant. It's been like it really has, because it actually feels now like the factory city in the center is this like big mysterious source of technology. Whereas when you played Scythe in the past, it's like it's just a nice way of making that the
give me a faction card,
the hill to be king of. Yeah, exactly.
I think part of that though is because when you're playing the standalone game, it is just a standalone game. It's a fixed map. But when you're in a campaign, like if someone's run away with the game, then you've got to suddenly reset to having nothing again, and it's that disparity between it's still the same location, you still start in the same place, and you've won, and you're supposed to campaign as in following on from where that was, but then it's like everyone's just pulled all the troops back and all the farmers and gone, we're just going to reset and just pretend we were friends.
We do that in the campaign though. Like
that's what I'm saying. Like from one game to the next in the campaign,
there is a disparity there.
Whereas it's not like you've developed or going on to a new land and I think that might be where the theme is weird with the campaign.
What about like the perks and modding? So can we talk about infrastructure mods?
Don't get me started.
Go on, Sam. Give us
This is one thing that I feel is a big negative to this campaign, and it feels like there's a proper runaway mechanic to it. Once you've won a campaign or you've achieved an objective or whatever it is, there are perks that you can get. You can buy them through the money, the points that you earn at the end of the game. But once you've got them, that's an advantage over everyone else. And I feel like, yes, I probably played terribly, but I've reached a point now where I'm so far behind at the very first move. People are bringing out mechs in the first turn or having extra resources or whatever it is. And I've got none of that. So I'm immediately on a back foot on every single game we play. And I don't feel like there's a way of catching up that without...
You can't really close that gap very quickly.
Well, no, it's like you were saying that some of the games were able to bring to an end quicker. But there's no way I could trigger that because I don't have the facilities to do that. I don't have the upgrades or anything to do that.
My faction has a very specific opening round where I'm going to do the same 3 actions each game unless something drastically changes. Whereas I suppose you
I
might
can't
not, because
counteract
you
that.
don't have those three actions.
Yeah.
You do feel like you're playing catch up.
Yeah.
Well, completely. Because, like in the normal game, when you very first start, you're hindered by the terrain that you're on. So you need to get your mechs going with the river walk and things, and that's in all games of Scythe. But I'm always hindered by the same things. Whereas if you start getting perks and things, then you're already going, right, I'll just jump over that, I'll skip that, I'll go around that, I'll get those objectives, I'll pick up all that. I can't do those things. And that feels like I'm really on the back foot all the time.
It's worth pointing out as well that because you missed the first episode, didn't you? So you missed the first game.
Yeah.
So we used an automa to replace you. And the automa is going to play very consistently. It's going to go through the same motions and get to like a certain level depending on how long the game goes on. But if you were in the driving seat there, potentially you might have earned more. So you might have come to game 2 with enough to buy that first mod.
I probably wouldn't have because I
But
played really badly.
you
But
you never know.
That is a possibility. But
Yeah.
it does feel like now that some of the players around the table have got such an advantage. I'm like, okay, I'll just try and do my own thing and try and get a few more points than I got the previous time in the hope that it'll give me advantage.
There is a definite snowball. I don't think the advantages are huge. There are certain things that you can get in the game, right?
Yeah.
And some are much better than others, and especially at the beginning, it's random, sort of who gets what. But some are like
drawn out
much better than others, and I do feel like it's such a huge advantage. But most of the other stuff in there isn't. You know, like there's a huge sort of range of advantages, and it makes it a little bit random. But the same 2 people have won every game. But I don't think that is particularly because of this stuff. I think that's just because of experience.
I don't think that's because of this stuff. But I do think it does feel like I'm always falling behind.
Yeah, and it's difficult as well because you don't want to punish players for winning.
It's difficult to do in this game anyway.
But I mean, like Pandemic Legacy, if you fail a game, it rewards you in a way. Like it gives you more stuff for the next game. It's like it balances the difficulty.
Saying that, you don't necessarily need to win a game to get the mods. So you win the game, you get all your victory points together, and then all those victory points then goes into a wealth bank. So you could win a game by like 75 points, which means at the end of that game, you've got $75 to spend on mods. Mods cost $50 each, so you can get one mod from the bank there. So Dave might have come second with 60 points, but he's still got enough to afford one. But then if everyone's getting all these mods and kind of running ahead, because they almost like they just make some actions a lot cheaper than they normally would be, perhaps. So I can see like how that advantage can kind of self-perpetuate a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily ice you out. But you do. There's been games where none of us have earned enough money to buy a mod the next turn.
The very quick games.
Yeah, the short ones.
Because it's based on your victory points, isn't it?
But despite that, I'm still enjoying playing it.
Yeah.
It's still Scythe, and I still like the game.
It's still that sort of Rubik's Cube of a puzzle, isn't
Well,
it?
it is. I'm trying to beat what I did previously, whilst dealing with everyone else and everything else around me. So I do. I mean, it might be I feel more hard done by being positioned next to the automa, because they are naturally more aggressive through their moves. So I have to account for that, and I've got to try and hold those back. Whereas no one else has really had to deal with that. It's dealing with each other. There's no, which is a bit more. You can see what's going on a bit more. You know, if someone starts building up a load of forces, you think probably should account for that. But the automa is just suddenly move into your territory and kill everything. You're like, where did that come from? But it's just the way that it plays.
Yeah,
so it's just different.
It's an interesting point you make there, because the first game we played today went on for about 3 hours. That's probably one of the best games of Scythe I've played. It had everything. It was like there's tons of action, tons of fighting. We were having to kind of like make accommodations for other people and where they might be moving, and if we want to try and intercept them, or if we want to put resources elsewhere, if we just want to concentrate on trying to build up more resources so we can get more mechs out quickly, how we're going to get our victory stars down. And it felt like every turn I was like really invested in what I was doing, what everyone else was doing. Whereas we've not really had that in previous games. Sometimes you have like a runaway winner, or you can't really make your faction gel with the ideology you've got, because you've got your 2 tiles, and each game you get a separate tile which will dictate what particular actions cost what and what benefits you get.
Yeah, but
I think we are getting better at the game.
We are, but like I was saying, then you sort of got to the hand of it, the longer games, but in those long games, I lost 3 mechs and a load of workers to the automa attacking me.
Yeah.
Sort of unprecedented, so they sort of leapfrog over, and so that then took away a load of my territories right at the end of the game, which just got my points.
They move in a sort of like they are quite predictable in the movements though, and they
spread out, aren't they?
Yeah,
if you leave unprotected workers or
they're going to
mechs
get mopped
whilst
up.
you've got low power right next to them, just like you would if there was a human player sat right next to you, which is exactly what happens.
Well, it is, but I think that's what I'm saying. I think they're naturally more aggressive because of the way they
don't worry about popularity, do they? So they just
they don't,
and we also don't worry about the repercussions of their actions.
Yeah. They're a sort of ticking time bomb. They'll spread out through the first third of the game, and then the second section of the game they'll sort of consolidate a bit, and then towards the end they'll start throwing out victory stars and they'll start being really aggressive. And I suppose if you've got the wrong workers and things in the wrong places, they could, you could fall into that grinder, because the automa, it's the popularity track, isn't it? Where if you attack a worker, then you'll lose a popularity. So I think Sam had like 5 workers in 1 hex at one point. Yeah. But if the automa comes in, because the way that they score is different, they'll take out those 5 workers and not lose any popularity.
Whereas any other player wouldn't have attacked those 5 workers because the popularity hit would have been too much.
Yeah, it'd be a really effective meat shield.
Something you have to bear in mind.
Yeah,
they are also a tasty source of VP if you handle them right. It's the automa is on the lowest setting, like the easy sort of setting, even though it still gets aggressive. But you can cap it, you can kneecap it if you go in aggressive as well and start taking its territories, because it spreads out 1 worker per space. So if you're prepared to take the reputation hit or account for that, you can just rinse through their territory quite easily without thinking, oh no, Leki's going to get revenge on me if I do this. Yeah, because it will just suck it up. And interestingly, we were talking about this before the previous game. The rules for what the automa does when you've run it right back to its home base. Like I've never seen that happen. But if you literally took all of its territory, so it might be something to bear in mind if you are stuck next to it. Get stuck in, get aggressive, and start battering it.
Definitely. What does everybody think about Scythe Bingo?
Not noticing the benefit to it yet, have we? But
the really fast games negated it completely, didn't they?
There's a crib sheet at the bottom of your player sheet where you put down what your where you keep track of everything that happens in the campaign, really. And each time you get a victory star, you can then, at the end of that game, claim it in a little grid. So if you make a line from left to right, you can get $25 towards your final campaign score. And if you get a line from top to bottom, which is about 5, you can score $25 as well that way. So in the first 2 games, I think we kind of filled up a line, got quite a few combat stars out, victory stars out. And then in 2 of the games, I think we got 2 for 7 players.
2 stars between 7 players across 2 games,
But in terms of game to game, looking at what victory stars you've got in one game and what victory stars you need to complete a line or try and get a row, has that kind of changed the way that you play in the game? You're just ignoring it and hoping for the best?
That's changed. It's changed what I'm going for.
Yeah.
But maybe a little bit too much, because you're kind of locked in with the faction that you are as well. And I don't think it's made me play the faction in ways that the faction's probably not meant to be played.
Yeah,
I've been going for victory conditions that I probably shouldn't be doing. Trying to go for the more difficult ones.
Just make you experiment with the systems a bit more.
And which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it's anything that makes you use things differently is good.
Yeah, looking from a different point of view.
I think it's pretty cool that you're thinking that far ahead. Whereas I'm just like, I'll just get what I can, and go for whichever stars I can. I know what you mean. Before the campaign started, I was like, right, okay, as soon as I filled up the enlist row, I'm going to concentrate on just building mechs in the next game, and then I'm just going to concentrate on... No, none of that's happened. It's literally just like what is available.
As soon as we had these 2 games that nothing happened, I was like, have I actually got enough games left to fill this line now? No. So...
Yeah. Should we just jump in and talk about these 2 games then, the 2 sort of janky middle games?
Yeah, because
without massive spoilers, they run so fast.
They have the potential
they don't
to
have to
run
run fast. Yeah, but they did.
They kind of do.
So,
one of them we saw was coming really fast. The other one just wow.
Yeah,
but
about half an hour. One of them.
Yeah, probably an hour and a half to finish both of them. And so part of you's like, cool, more content. More stuff's being added, and we're accessing the boxes. And then now that we talked about it a little since the game, it does feel like if it had just been a normal game of Scythe and then that stuff had happened, that would have been really cool. But the sort of jankiness of rattling through 2 games out of an 8-game campaign faster than you ever expected.
If you just had a game and then there was whoever collected the most,
Or
whatever.
If it would have been the star thing plus the extra victory condition,
rather than instead of, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think if we
that would
if
be
we ever
epic.
did play through the campaign again, that would instantly be the first house rule. Is those 2 things happen at once? Yeah, because basically it's an epic game, like you mentioned before about the teardown took as long as the setup and play. When each time you sit down for a game of this, like Eclipse, you don't want it to be over in half an hour. You want to sit, get your teeth into it, and have the big epic experience.
Yeah.
So something that takes away from that in such a quick way, and I don't blame you, Leki, for rushing in and doing that. That's perfectly valid.
We didn't know that was going to happen in the second game.
And it's kind of how Rust V8 play is. You want to rush out a victory. In the regular game, you'd be doing that anyway. You'd be rushing out and
you'd be trying to
conquering.
take the factory as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So that was strange and wrong footing, but we'll see how it plays out by the end of the campaign. By the time we finish 8 games, you might think, actually, it was worth rattling through those 2 so that we could get
I don't think we're going to see that again. I think the next 3 games are going to be full on.
I'd be pretty shocked if they did
that.
But it was the fact that they were back to back as well, I think.
Yeah, I think with the amount of basically with the way that Jamie runs his operation at Stonemaier and the amount of play testing as it must do is because it must be play tested with and without Automa. I'm just speculating. Jamie must have foreseen the fact that these games can end quickly and thought, yeah, great. It's going to make a game of Scythe a lot more unpredictable.
Yeah, I'll just get you on to the next game.
Exactly.
So,
and
how bad can that be?
And it's a great way of introducing content. It's not introducing content and saying, you start episode 3, there you go, here's a new thing, get going with it. You're kind of discovering stuff as you go along. There's stuff out on the game board. There's stuff hidden away from the game board. You're collecting tokens sometimes and you don't know why. You're collecting tokens sometimes, but you know exactly why. And there's a great use of components as well, where components are recycled. So one game you were collecting things thinking, right, I know what it's going to do now. Those components come back on the board. And you get to the end of the game and the game book tells you something completely different. And it's great. It just means that you're constantly sort of second guessing yourself on what you're meant to be doing. We could have had a very sort of patient game where we sort of gentlemanly move around it a bit slower and try and build up more victory points. But it just didn't happen that way.
And that really, it's not always Scythe. Some factions will do that. Others, it doesn't behoove them. They want to get the victory as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Well, I tried to race in that one, didn't I? It backfired horribly. It wasn't fast enough.
How is everyone enjoying playing the same faction for multiple games, really? I know we've been randomising the ideologies. So you basically shuffle up how you get your movement and buffs. So if your movement's with your deploy or not, that sort of stuff. I can't remember how you'd actually describe it. Player mats and faction mats, yeah. So the player mats have been shuffled up at the end of each game and passed out. I played 3 games in a row with the engineering player mat, which I actually quite enjoyed because I got to learn it. But then I got cultural and I didn't know how that worked.
No, it's like with Eclipse. I could happily play the same race in Eclipse over and over and over to actually try and get better with them. And with Scythe, every time you get a new player mat, that wrong foots you to try and get your head around that. Yeah. So if you got a new faction mat as well every time, I think I'd probably find I'd be less invested because you're just like, well, who am I actually representing in this game? And B, you'd be having to rethink everything every game. And I don't think you'd have that sort of consistently. Yeah. Okay, well, I've got, for example, I'm Togawa, so I've got my traps, I've got to work that into my strategy, and then everything else sort of builds around it kind of thing. Dave's got his Nordic swimmers, so that's a consistent thing that you can rely on, but then you've got to work out how you get your different player mats to function with your faction. Same applies to all of us. You've got your rush Fiats. But I think
Russian.
But it also establishes a bit of a player identity as well. I know that you're going to be an aggressive player romping across the map. I know that some people are going to turtle a bit more than others, and I think that's quite a nice sort of element. If it was permanently like that, it would probably suck. But knowing that we're only doing it for 8 games and possibly less, I think it works quite well.
Do you feel the same, Sam, with your horrendous boat mechs?
Or do you feel stuck in a rut? Do you think it would help if you
I
switched
hate
it?
the physical miniatures of my mechs.
Your Robin Reliant ones. The yellow Crimea, isn't it?
Tractors on
the
unstable
tractors.
Yeah,
wheels.
mine are the
You're
boat mechs.
The boat mechs are slightly better than the tractor mech.
I've got the big fat purple mechs.
At
The
least they
white
look solid.
mechs are the best, right? Everyone can agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine could be stopped by someone sticking a stick through its spokes of its wheel.
That's why you've been scoring so low.
So apart from the physicality of them, I've not got a problem with the actual faction.
You've got a hardcore ability as well. The Crimea
Yeah,
faction
that is a
to
sick
spend
fact,
combat
yeah.
cards as resources, I think, is probably second to
I think it's
Rusviet,
probably
if
the
not-
best.
Yeah.
And I think
It's either tied with
maybe a
Rusviet.
component that agrees with us.
I'm gonna hold my hand up and say that Rusviets use whatever ability you want to at any one time, unless it's a factory, is borderline OP.
Yeah,
I like nerfing it so you can't have industrialists with it is a very good idea.
yeah.
No,
I think
I've really enjoyed playing
Rusviet's
as
the
them
best.
because of it, though. Yeah,
And I would say Crimea is either tied or second best in terms of ability.
That ability
and
is
it's
great.
it's on those tokens, isn't it, that tell you basically how much they're worth, the abilities.
yes.
And like you gave me your token and I got no gold for it, and this is spoilerish.
That's just a little bit spoilery.
but it's sort of it rates the abilities, and it's
But
nice
yeah.
to
the
know.
ability is great, but you start with no combat cards, so you then got to waste stuff to try and get them to then use the resource when you could just get the resource instead. So
But
only
you come by combat cards so easily though. Like throughout the game, you're racking them up every time
Yeah.
you bolster,
You
every
were-
time
I wasn't getting
every time you
any.
lose a combat.
I wasn't getting any.
Well,
Yeah,
then
I
maybe you
wasn't
need to
really
work that
getting
into your
any
strategy as well. and-
Because for that, it's like going after food, isn't it?
It's enlisting as well. Enlisting is so important.
Yeah.
because
I
as
was
soon
doing
as you
enlisting
trigger
first,
that,
so I was getting one if you enlisted because I was next to the automa. It was very random what they were doing anyway.
well, I'm an enlist addict. That's definitely. I mean, if you look at the bingo thing, I'm all about enlisting.
Tristan enlists so much that it's actually got me enlisting as soon as possible.
Because you benefit from it straight away, right?
Just by osmosis.
So it's
yeah,
an enlist
yeah.
race straight away because the person on either side of you is going to get the benefit every time you do it. So if you've got two people enlisting and you're doing it yourself, you're getting like 1, 2, or 3 resources per action. It's not even your go.
It's got to the point where I even do it in the order of enlist, then for deploy, then for upgrade, then for buildings in that order.
And this brings me on to the next sort of faction related thing. Not everybody's in a starting position to be able to enlist straight away.
No,
Because
you need
of the
food.
player map.
You need food.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No, but you can trade for food. So there's no.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the other thing, and that's something I do all the time is trade for food. If I get a
But
get a player
it's
map,
not optimal. And when you start playing suboptimally, and it's not playing towards the faction strengths or the ideology strengths, when you start doing that, you're taking a risk.
Who
I think there's always going to be suboptimal moves in amongst the ones
Yeah.
that give you the gold on the lower actions. But I think if it's going to set you up for something, whatever player mat you get, enlisting is always going to be good. And if you have to produce for it because you've got access to food, I don't think you don't have food, do you?
I don't enlist very much because I don't have food.
So if I was in your position, I would be trading for food constantly. That's how I'd be.
But there's
unlocking
other
it.
stuff that I need to be doing because if I don't get moving straight away, I'm locked.
Of course, there is. It's that kind of game, though, isn't it?
But this is
is
it,
the
and
tagline for the
it's
game.
kind of this is the other thing. Like I don't have a problem with the factions. I'm sick of that starting position, not because it's bad. I'm just bored with it.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going through the same. It's like you said before.
Move.
My first sort of 4 or 5 turns, I know what I'm doing.
Is that because of the
let's
mods or
move
because
on.
of the actual like sort of geography of where you are?
Both the mods
same.
the mods have kind of changed it a little bit but the mods just give me free stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to be trying to get that anyway.
It's why I'm always, as Rusviet, going to teleport out of my starting territory and river walk after that. I never get river walk as my first mech anymore. It's always just where can I teleport, because usually I get more adventures from it and I get a few extra early game buffs. And if the game doesn't end, then I'll just teleport back to my starting position and work out from there.
Or get kicked back to it out of fighting.
Maybe. But yeah, like Dave's right though. My opening moves in terms of production and where I'm moving to feel really stale now. And I think it's mainly it's highlighted because we're playing so many games quickly, but also because everything else feels so fresh. And it just needs
We
some
want to get
way
to the
of
interesting
mixing it up.
bits,
Yeah,
of the game.
exactly. Such as scratching your head and wondering what the heck you're meant to be doing.
Isn't that every game?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I suppose that. So that's okay. That's a total counter argument to having the same faction every game for the campaign.
But there is, but this is it. Like, I don't want to change faction.
You just want to
Like,
change.
if we mentioned the option to change faction, say there was an option to change the faction, right? I wouldn't take it in a campaign game unless I was forced to do it.
But if you could move where you started,
But if I could move where I started, yeah, that would be.
Yeah, me and Dave were discussing at the beginning of like the second game. What would be cool was if one of the upgrades, and we don't know if it'll happen or not yet because we're not all the way through the campaign, would be just the faction logo as a little coaster, and we randomise where they start, and then we'll move around the table, and being sat next to different players or different automa might just add a bit of variety there, because the Europa map, it's kind of, it's just abstract anyway, isn't it? It's just representing a battlefield practically.
There's a couple of flaws with that idea. I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
but for starters, Tagawa and Albion
The
would
balance of the
be
game.
screwed because they don't have Riverwalk, so you're basically isolating them to the peninsulas.
Yeah.
And the individual factions, mats, I think abilities are sort of linked up to. For example,
Yeah, they
Dave can
definitely
swim
are.
out straight away.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're on a path, if you're on Tagawa's or Albion's starting position, and you've got a path directly to the factory, then your
Yeah.
swimming ability's defunct.
Yeah.
So there will be some jankiness if you did do that,
never,
but
yeah.
it would mix it up. And actually, now that we're at a point in the campaign where certain things have changed anyway, it might be quite a fresh start. And I think probably, given the point we're at, we'd be able to tackle that change. I think in the base game, if you did that, you'd definitely put people at an instant disadvantage.
If anyone's homebrewed that particular rule or would like to,
surprised that that's not a thing.
yeah, email boardchitlist@gmail.com and let us know. We'd love to give it a go.
Put it in the comments.
Is there anything that we've missed in terms of like game-wise, mechanics-wise, that has really like brought something new to Scythe from the expansion? I mean, as Rise of Fenris, it's campaign, but as an expansion, I don't know how much you paid for it at retail, but for me, it seems really good value for money. There's a lot in the box.
If you like the game, it adds so much, and you could feasibly skip the campaign altogether. So I know I saw someone post that on BGG the other day. Like, I've no interest in the campaign. What does it add?
I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, it introduces the extra components like quite well.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
but you'd have to have the same group. So this might be people who are going to like gaming club nights or whatever. And but and so even if you just ignore the campaign and just look at the components, what you get, the new elements it brings, and everything, this is an instant buy for me anyway, because I love the game and it adds probably more than the two previous expansions put together.
It feels like 3 expansions in one. It feels like a big box expansion. Right?
And there's like 3 games to go as well. 3 more games probably worth of extra stuff that we haven't seen.
Yeah, and we have
There's 3 more games in the campaign, and then there's new ways to play at the end of it. So there's like co-op mode. And
This
all
is
that kind of
how
stuff.
expansions should be.
Like the Merchants and Marauders expansion, the one that just added in loads of extra modular stuff.
And I know we've moaned about the shorter games, but we have absolutely no idea how those games are going to go. Like anything could happen. Like in terms of rule sets, in terms of story beats, in terms of what we're all doing, everything just changes quite dramatically each game.
I think what we need to do in the next game is me and Dave on either side of you, Leki. So we'll just go straight into your home base, box you in so you can't rush the end game, and we'll give Sam some time to take the AI on and let things pan out a little more and play a proper game.
I'm probably going to be on Automa, so I can see that working.
You will be.
There's but yeah, like Daz,
Leki hit the factory in 2 turns.
yeah, but Daz was even Daz mentioned like he's got a faction that he's not familiar with. But sometimes he's not being given enough time to actually get to grips with that faction and see how it works. And I can see that kind of leading to quite a negative game experience. But at the same time, I've really enjoyed each game. Even the shorter ones, they're not quite Scythe in my opinion, but at the same time, it's still really good. If that was another random game, then that'd be brilliant. And also with what the campaign Rise of Fenris expansion material brings to the game, if you've got someone in your gamer group, a bit like Dave, where they'll play Scythe with you, but it's not going to set the world on fire with the prospect of doing it. There's enough in Rise of Fenris that you can say, right, we're going to play with this particular track set. We're going to use that faction because you can get to grips with it and you can try something new. And they'll have like a really good game of Scythe with it. It'll freshen it up, no end. Whereas with the Wind Gambit and the Invaders from Afar, they just brought in new factions that played in exactly the same way. They brought in airships, but they play in exactly the same way. And it brought new material to the game, but it was very Scythe-y. with the material that's in the Scythe Rise of Fenris box, it feels like it'll really kind of change the dynamic enough to make the game enjoyable again if you've just overdosed on it. Was that as resounding? Yes, Dave. Brilliant.
Look, it's still Scythe. If I want to play a Euro, it's not quite Euro enough for me, and it's not. If I want to play like
How would you want to play Euro?
And if I want to play like an area control sort of fist fight sort of game, get up in someone's face, it's not quite that either. It's a good middle ground. I think it's an amazing design. Yeah. It's just not. Doesn't quite get me where I want in either category. Yeah. So it's not that I enjoy playing it. Even the amount that we played like 5 games in a week. Like, if it can hold your attention, there's nothing wrong with the game. Like, it's a good game. It's just not. And the campaign's not changed my mind on that. 3 games left. Maybe there's something in these extra bits that is going to be like, we need to play that in Scythe every time if Dave's coming.
That's the Dave fixer.
A claw hammer is being found in the box.
But it's there's certainly nothing in it that puts me off.
Yeah, no.
Like this is like one of the best expansions I've seen for a game.
In terms of compared to the core set, then how does Rise of Fenris retail? Is it more expensive than the core game? Is it a similar price? Is it a lot cheaper?
It's cheaper than the core game. At least it was for me. I don't know what the discounts or Kickstarts. Oh, it wasn't Kickstarted this. I think it was straight to retail.
Straight to publish,
once you put everything together with all 4 expansions and then the legendary boxes, and I bought all the promos as well, which is like 5 sets of 5 cards at $5 each. You know, it soon starts racking up. And if you want the experience that we're playing with, which is everything rolled in, you're talking a couple of $100 probably by the end of it. But yeah, I mean, if you just bought the base game, you could just buy Rise of Fenris, and skip the other 2 expansions and all the promos and stuff. You'd probably get it under £100 maybe. And I think you'd still get a lot of meat, because actually the base game itself has a lot of replayability. It's one of those kind of games where I just want to play more. Yeah. But what did you think, Sam? I know you're struggling with like lagging behind. Basically, you feel. Are you excited about playing it more, or are you just like, let's get to the end of this campaign and play something else?
No, I like Scythe. I like playing the game. I like the meatier games, and the quicker games really didn't do it for me because of the situation I'm in. So I spent a lot of time on those quick games trying to build an engine, but it hadn't even started before the game was over, which then negatively impacted my score at the end because I hadn't been able to achieve anything. So that sort of again snowballed. But I do enjoy playing the game, and it is like a puzzle, a lot of it. I like trying to figure out the best way to do things. Just proves I'm really bad at puzzles.
And to be fair, those shorter games did impact everybody's scores.
They dragged everyone down.
That is, I said like there's nothing in it that detracts from the game, and that probably did, because you'd want to play a longer game of Scythe.
I think we were all a little thrown off by those.
Yeah, but
I'm interested to see how it falls out after the final game.
Like, even though it is detracted a bit, it's not put me off.
Knowing Stonemaier Games as a sort of publishing house, I think we're probably the last 3 games. If I could predict what would happen, is we're going to have another mid-length game where it's Scythe, some new content in terms of game mechanic variation. So maybe another early game finish, and then the final game's just going to be epic.
I think we're going
to
go
be a full-on war. You think there's going to be a co-op in there?
Not co-op. I think we're going to go teams.
As in, like, me and you versus these guys.
Oh, you mean like you've been playing the whole time? Have you guys ever even had?
No, we've had a couple of combats.
Occupy the same space as
No, we've had a couple of combats, but it's been kind of like, you might as well just do that. You send me home and I can.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put any power or any combat cards in, so you can just take it for nothing.
It got like gaming the system.
It got to the point where, because Raphael took over some of the Automa sticks, we've been playing on a Saturday, so include Raphael into it. He's great at playing Scythe. He's like well adept at the rules. And it got to the point when even he looked at me and called me an idiot for not attacking Dave's unoccupied workers.
That was the most like... It was the craziest move I think I'd ever seen. It was like Dave and Leki had an agreement before they came to the game day. I'll give you a $5 if you don't get me.
No, but it would have resulted, and you know it would have resulted in me and you just out. Would have been out of the game, because
we should probably set the scene. So this is 2 workers of Dave's in
like
Leki's territory with a shed load of resources, stood next to your mech, and your mech's looking right at him and goes, "No, I'm gonna wander off over here." So you would have taken like a 1 or 2 popularity hit, and just cleaned up, got some territory back, and then it was you went off on an adventure instead.
Yeah.
Well, you would have vacated the territory you were in as well. So you'd have lost that, but you'd have got like 4 resources, which probably would have got you something, an upgrade or a building or something.
No, there was no justifying it.
No, there isn't.
But this is the thing. No, this is why I love it, because it's the meta of the game as well. You're not just limited by the mechanics.
Because now suddenly
Unless you've
Leki's
got
got
the
to
ultimate.
defend his borders for the rest of the game. Because I'm like you, I'm not gonna take that. I'm gonna just be like,
This is what I was saying. Like,
no one holds a grudge like Dave.
Had it been
That's
the
exactly what I
automata,
Well, maybe you do, which is why I've not attacked you either.
had either of you been the automata in that situation, there was no way that you wouldn't have just lost everything.
Probably would. It probably would have skipped its turn.
Well,
Yeah,
possibly.
I mean, it wouldn't be building up resources.
It would have just been. It would have just been hacking away at you constantly.
Yeah.
You can't sort of go. I'm not going to do that because I'm scared of the.
You are in a bad
repercussions."
position, which again is why I feel like the sort of starting positions would mix it up.
As
Maybe,
a
but
hu-
The
as a- as a
automata
human,
doesn't
I
make a
have other
decision
things
based
to
on
do.
you leaving 4 resources.
No, it
unprotected.
just-
Did.
But it didn't. It attacked you when you had 5 dudes in a mech.
Let's put it this way: if
Who
you're
does that?
if you're leaving your house and you're on your way to work, and your neighbours left the car keys in the ignition,
you don't rob his
turning over while
Like the giant mech.
while they defrost the windscreen, are you entitled to take his car? No. As a gentleman, you leave his car where the hell you found it.
I'm finding a vague flaw in this analogy.
It's exactly the same.
If your neighbour is Nazi Germany and you were the Allies, you know.
Now I know
it's
that
a
I've won the
different
argument.
situation.
The Nazis have been brought up.
As soon as Hitler's
I
brought
win.
up, that's the end.
Exactly.
I didn't say
Exactly.
Hitler, I said Nazis.
But to be honest, just to address
it is
this
based on the
issue,
First World War, so it's sort of leading up to that era.
now I can hear Mark Chaplin's dad laughing at me as well. I need to justify what my thought process. And basically, it was wood, wasn't it?
It was just a load of wood.
Yeah, I basically I had most of my buildings out. I didn't
That's
need
the
any more
Euro
wood.
part.
I could have gone and taken over more hexes and got the adventure.
Which is what you did.
Yeah.
for an
So
adventure.
I didn't feel the
Probably
need to
got
believe.
No, you
more.
didn't literally go for an adventure. It wasn't. It was just a dull move. I was saying that. I was like, your mech is wandering off.
No, I was after a.
I think Leki's thought process,
campaign.
whenever Tristan suggests something though to him, I think Leki's like, hang on a minute, maybe I'm being played. And I think that's part of why.
There's a point. You've got an ally with Dave on your right, and you've got an adversary with me on your left.
Tristan suggests something just because he's like, he's being friendly, and the first place I go to is what's in it for Tristan.
Last time we played Resistance, he got me.
I'll never forgive you for taking over the
Spartacus.
village I was after. Yeah, was it the farm that you occupied? I was after in like the second.
Oh, that was when we were in an actual.
Oh yeah.
Alliance.
That turned out well. Anywho, I'm sure we've bored everyone to tears about how I was foolish. So well, there's one thing we've not discussed, and that's the actual component quality and the artwork. For me, it's elevated Scythe a little bit. It's not just kind of kept the quality of the artwork and the components. It's elevated them. The artwork's really evocative. It's made it darker.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
It's sort of like more sort of cyborgy, robot-y stuff going on. I feel like they've really, like the artist has really hit his stride with this one.
Reminds me more of, I don't know, it was similar anyway, but it reminds me more of like the Tannhauser stuff.
Yeah.
It's quite like alternate reality, but dark.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
really cool. Yeah.
No, I think that's what you get with Stonemaier. You're going to get 10 out of 10 component quality. All the miniatures are good. The pieces, the wood, the artwork, everything is just.
Some of the miniatures with a highlight. Some of the new, if there's new miniatures in the game.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
the speculative
they were like,
new
whoa.
miniatures might have been interesting if they'd appeared.
Can't be worse than the Crimea's old mechs.
Your bicycle mech.
Yeah. Popped a wheelie.
Yeah, no, that's something that really appeals to me. I wish you could get the faction boards and playmats for this. I would love for Eclipse. You know, the 2-tiered ones where you put the wood on and it just slots in. Oh God, I love that.
Are they
It's
not
just-
in second edition?
They probably are, but I'm so far into first edition Eclipse. There's
The
no way.
second edition, I think, is strange. I think it's like with a circular one, and they sort of.
Oh, it's
spiral.
dials, I think,
They
is it?
No. I think it's inserts, but they sort of spiral in from each other. It might be dials, but it looks.
You
a lot
guys should totally
nicer.
get that.
Maybe expensive, but yeah.
But yeah, no, I love it when a game is designed like this and they've played it so often that they're like, what is the optimal way for the player to experience juggling all these different elements? And there's a place for everything. I even love that there's a spot on the board for each card deck. You know, like the adventure cards go here, the combat cards go there. It's just so neat.
Yeah.
Everything is so neat and well organised.
Encounter tokens have a little encounter token.
Yeah. Oh, it's just so
Yeah.
pretty.
No, it's cool. It's cool. Right then, wicked. Well, that is Scythe, the
Got to
Rise of
save a
Fenris.
bit for the last episode.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So our intention now, we've been good to you and not spoiled Rise of Fenris, is
Except for the spoilers.
we're going to come back to it at the end of the campaign, talk a bit more about it, but then just go spoiler-tastic.
Spoil it. Ruin it.
Yeah. We'll try and double it up with another game that you haven't heard, so you don't have to avoid a whole episode, and we will...
Bored Scytheless.
That's brilliant. A bit on the scythe for all of us. That was episode 51. Scythe, The Rise of Fenris. I think a great game. Everyone else in with me on that one?
Yeah.
Totes. If you've played it, if you haven't played it, if you're just looking forward to it, if you're excited, if you're not excited, if it's bored you, get in touch with us.
Basically, if you're a human
If you're a human,
and you're listening,
if you're not automas need not apply. Jump in on Facebook on the hashtag board shitlist group. Let us know there. Comment on SoundCloud or iTunes. Please like and share. More and more people are listening every week, and we really do thank your support. So from all of us this week, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
bye.
Cheers.